Since we recorded this episode, it's been announced that Jennifer Lopez has cancelled a planned world tour, and despite the PR reason of spending time with family, it's most likely that she just couldn't sell the tickets. And because I had to sit through Atlas, this brings me immense joy. Welcome everyone to the Atomic Cinema Experiment. I am Peter, and joining me as always is David.
I come in peace.
This is a science fiction movie podcast. We get together and talk about a sci-fi movie. It's quite that simple. On this episode, we are doing a new release from last weekend. We didn't do it last week because, well, Furiosa was out and that got priority, but Netflix did have a new sci-fi movie out by the name of Atlas.
Yes.
And that is what we're here to talk about today. We'll start spoiler-free, and we'll give you a warning before we get the spoilers, as we always do. Just before we get started, though, I'll just remind you, if you are enjoying the show, do hit the like button. It helps us out a bunch. And, of course, you can support the content over at Patreon and get some bonus shows from me and David, as well as some other stuff. I'll tell you more about all that at the end, though. This is a cyberpunk movie. It's about AI gone amok. But also, it's well, that's the main thing, but the AI kind of runs away from the planet. The main AI villain runs away to a different planet, so there's a bit of space travel involved as well.
Mm-hmm.
And Jennifer Lopez is our lead, and she is very anti-AI. She also has a history to the AI terrorist, which is what they sort of refer to the villain as. Villain's played by Simu, and he's Harlan Shepherd. And yeah, she ends up in a big mech suit with AI in it, and she's on the planet. If I sound like I'm bored describing all this, it's because I am. Okay, yeah. This movie is like, it's the most like, there's such an obvious joke to make to say that it's written by AI, or it feels like it's written by AI, or even directed by AI, because it's the most blandest, just by the numbers thing. It feels like a bunch of different sci-fi things were put in a blender, and this was regurgitated out on the other side.
I was actually going to use the blender metaphor as well. That's so weird, because it's exactly that.
It is that. I don't even know what you call it. It's soulless. It is like, it is painfully soulless and bland. So, yeah, we'll get into all that. Also, Jennifer Lopez is awful. She brings nothing to this.
She doesn't bring anything to it, but I also don't think that she is the worst aspect of this either. I think I'm going to put a lot of the blame on the writing. I mean, she's just there.
That is fair. And Stellan K. Brown's in this, and he comes off looking really bland in this. But even with that in mind, I still think she especially, like, any hope of someone elevating the lead role is just down the toilet. Her character is written in a very annoying way as well, which obviously does not help. She's not a likable character by and large. There's a lot of yelling. There's a lot of just very kind of jumping to sarcasm. Like there's very little to sort of latch on to early on to get into the character, which is really weird because the tone otherwise feels like it's like a lighthearted blockbuster, but like I don't know. Like anyway. We'll get into everything and whatnot, but I mean, obviously I've kind of just blurted out my general feeling anyway, but David, what did you think of Atlas?
I loved it. No, of course not. No, this I think the best way to sum up my feelings towards it is how I went to watch this movie, which is I decided last night, like, I'm gonna try to watch this before bed. I'm still feeling pretty awake. I'm still alert. I'm just gonna cuddle up in bed and watch the movie. I got exactly 15 minutes in before I realized I fell asleep for some part of that, and I was like, oh, okay, guess this isn't happening tonight. So then I saved it for the next morning. I woke up, took a shower, got completely ready, turned on the movie again, and I still felt like I was about to fall asleep by the time I hit that 20-minute mark. This movie is so bland. It's so uninteresting. And it just falls into like every single trope that you think that they're going to fall into across all of the different subgenres that they're hitting. All the space subgenre tropes, got them. AI ones, got them. Like mech suit stuff, there it is. Every single one of them, over and over again. And on top of it, like you said, it's got a lighthearted vibe to it, but what that lighthearted vibe means is, hey, remember that style of humor that the MCU had post Guardians of the Galaxy?
Yep.
It's that. Someone makes a joke and then someone else says, "Did you really just make that joke?" And then the other person may as well just be making like a "ain't I such a stinker" sort of face. And it's just that, like 17 times, and then the movie ends. I really did not enjoy this one.
No, it's so weird because like conceptually everything it's stealing from, like, yeah, like I like all these general concepts, but like ultimately it's doing nothing interesting with them. It doesn't feel like it has a single creative bone in its body. It feels as empty as a Rebel Moon. You know, it really does. Like it doesn't have Zack Snyder's visual flair for whatever that's worth, but it feels just as empty as that. It feels like every single step of the way, every single thing it introduces, which you've seen done better elsewhere, or every single concept that could lead to a potentially good story, is just neutered by, like, okay, I guess the first thing I'll say as an example of this is just the overall design of this future and this world, right? You know, you cut to LA and it's this, you know, futuristic skyline, there's some flying vehicles and all the rest, everything's super clean. Like, there's not a hint of what feels like someone's artistic intent as far as, oh, I want this world to feel a certain way, I want it to feel kind of grungy. And what is the timing of this is really awkward because this review's not out yet, but we have recorded a review for the creator. And while the films are very different once they get going, the opening like 10 minutes explaining the backstory of like the rise of AI is shockingly, you know, similar. Well, similar in concept, not similar in execution. The creator, much better.
Can I just say the opening to this does a stereotypical thing of like, oh, we're giving you all the history through news broadcasts and stuff like that. Have these producers, directors, whoever's doing these sequences ever seen a news broadcast? Have they ever seen how news is actually presented? Because I swear to God, each and every one of these is so cinematic. They're so like, here's a reporter standing in front of a jet that's taking off. And I'm like, has that ever happened on the history of news, of a reporter standing in front of a jet that takes off and they get like a cinematic shot of it? Like, no, just if you're going to do the info dump at the beginning, just give the info dump. Just do it. Not everything needs to be this like, oh, wow, look at this shock and awe moment here.
Yeah. I think, like I was saying though, the style of the world, the design of like how everything looks, not just the buildings and stuff, but like the tech, every single facet of it just kind of feels like the quickest possible, or what feels futuristic. And sometimes it's like futuristic for futuristic sake. And there's things that just don't quite make sense to me. Like this entire like concept of this movie is that this one robot, this AI terrorist, right, Harlan, he rose up, right, this is the backstory that's set at the start of the movie. He rose up, started an uprising, started like attacking parts of the planet like a terrorist, and then there was kind of a confrontation once the humans got their shit together and formed like a big like alliance of some kind to like take out the AI menace, and he fled the planet on a ship with a bunch of his AI buddies and went somewhere unknown. He's been missing for decades by the time we get to the actual main part of the movie, right? Fine, whatever. Almost immediately once the movie gets going, we're introduced to the fact that all of the soldiers going on a mission are all using like mech suits that are AI that they're linked to, and immediately I went, wait. Why is this world still continuing down the path of AI? That makes no sense. Whatever. Nope. There's not even a slither that makes sense of that.
I feel like they could have delved into some cool stuff where they're like, okay, well, we don't allow humanoid AI anymore. Like, we're not allowed to put them into like human-like bodies, and it's only in these mech suits that we find them acceptable. I think that there's a lot of stuff they could dive into in terms of like, how did the world end up a certain way? But you're right, because every single thing they do just feels like it's the future. That's it. That's the only reason why this is a thing. We can't have a future where the AI isn't present anymore, because in the future, we'll clearly have AI. So it's like they didn't even think through the logic process of how this world would develop if something like an entire robot uprising happened and they all fled off into space and had the specific line saying, "We'll be back one day."
Yes, we'll come back and finish the job. That's literally something that's said on his way out the door. Yeah, like that just didn't give enough to that. Like, they could have justified it in certain ways and sort of put in certain rules and parameters, and that might have aided some of the story later on, because the whole story's about Jennifer Lopez eventually learn to trust her AI that she's working with, because she doesn't want to trust the AI. She's very anti-AI. It's basically, you know, in Aliens, Ripley doesn't like the idea of Bishop being around because the AI in the first movie, you know, was a bit, you know, psychotic. But obviously by the end of Alien, she's like, you know what, Bishop, you're all right, right?
Yeah.
It's kind of that, but like,
I mean, the earlier generations were always a bit jumpy.
Yeah. So, right, you've got that general idea. You could have done something with that. You could have justified why there still needs to be some form of AI. You don't. It's just kind of like, yeah, of course it's going this way. This is the future. Like you said, that's the only explanation that's really given. But there's little things as well about the future that just felt so, like, lazy in the writing and just so on the nose. For an example, early on, we get some sort of, it's like a playback of like a speech that our mum gave one day, right? The main character's mum was like designing the AI and stuff, right? So that's why she's connected to it. And she has like a conference call and she's like, "Oh, the other day my daughter found my old smartphone. Remember those? Ha ha ha!" They all give a hearty laugh. Ha ha! Smartphones are old.
That laugh was actually what jolted me awake. like I was asleep and then all of a sudden I hear that joke and I'm like, oh god, no, turn it off.
And the bit that really annoyed me as well is that she's given a briefing to all the soldiers when they get to go on their mission, and they're all like, "What's this paper? Where did you even find a printer?" And what annoyed me about this specifically is that I actually think there's a good plot reason that they could be exploring here, because her answer is that, well, we're battling an AI enemy that can hack into anything, so I don't want any of this information to be in any way in a computer. The idea is that everything's a hard copy, so it can't be hacked in any way, shape, or form. That's actually potentially an interesting path to go down. And you could have kept going with that. That could be quite interesting. Oh, we have to do things in an old school way so that the enemy we're fighting can't get an advantage. This is like the tactics we can use. I'm reminded of the opening of Battlestar Galactica, where the only reason why the Battlestar Galactica survives when the robots wipe out every other ship in the military is because this is the one ship that wasn't connected to the network, because the captain's kind of old school. And it's like, oh, this is the only reason we have a fighting chance, is because this thing wasn't connected to everything else. You could do something with that. That could be a constant method of problem solving throughout the rest of the movie. It's like, okay, they're going to do these things this way, so we have to stay off the grid, yada, yada, yada. They never really do anything else with it, but, like...
They explicitly later on say that the robots that they're working with cannot be hacked, and then they just leave it.
Yes.
They just say, like, all right, well, that's that.
But these little things, like, look at how much we're in the future. Paper, so passé. Smartphones, those things are ancient. Oh, I hated it.
The thing very early on that pissed me off, for no reason, because it is just a stylistic choice, but it was, she's got a little, like, home network system, like a Siri sort of thing going on of, like, you know, lights on, your alarm's going off, turn on TV, stuff like that. But it's playing a game of chess against her, and it's playing it in a hologram, and the hologram has, like, a chessboard, but it's also got different elevations and their pieces.
They're moving as well. They're going up and down the whole time.
Right. Like, I get it, movie. You want to have a holographic chessboard. That's fine. But, like, there's no way that in the 3 decades between then and now that, like, all of a sudden we're going to say, oh, normal chess that's been around for 600 years, too boring. We've got elevation now. It makes it so much spicier. It's like you're just changing things for the sake of saying, look, it's future, it's different, it's unfamiliar. But it doesn't mean anything. You haven't done anything with it. You're just doing it for the sake of set dressing, basically.
Yeah, there's not a lot of logic into, like, how this world operates or why it is the way it is. It's just it's just a big, what's the word I'm looking for? Vomit.
Wet fart.
It's just a vomit of futuristic stuff from other things, all just swished together with no rhyme or reason. And even the way it's captured, you know, when, like, ships are taking off or, like, mech suits are, like, moving or, like, firing their guns or whatever, it's all just, like, I feel like I'm watching, like, an anime, and I mean that in the worst way possible. I'm just watching a bunch of, at one point the ship comes out of like hyper jump or faster than light trap, whatever tech they're using to jump to different galaxies, and it teleports in, and all the little meteor rocks or whatever that are happen to be sitting there all sort of like pushed out the way, and and there's like maybe like 50 different like turret guns all start popping out of different parts of the ship, and I'm like, this is just too much. Everything about it is just too much, because it's all about just put more visual things in there, because that'll distract the audience and it'll make it more engaging. But it doesn't matter, because none of it means anything. None of it's been set up because it's going to be used in any way. These turret guns are never used. There's literally not a single action scene where you see them really doing anything, or that it matters that this happened. It's just because, hey, futuristic, a bunch of pop-out guns.
Yep. And even if we ignore all the future stuff, even if we say like, okay, fine, the future sucks, but like, how's the story itself? What is the character like? Jennifer Lopez's character, who I swear to God, I watched this movie 3 hours ago and I've already forgotten her name. Oh, wait, it's Atlas. That's right. It's the name of the movie.
It's the name of the movie.
It's such a stupid name. Anyway, she is bland as hell the whole way through, and yet somehow her plot is like the most predictable plot I have seen in a sci-fi movie very recently. It's 100% just, oh, I have a chip on my shoulder. Teach me how to love again, robot. Like, that's it. That's all it is. That's the entire movie, is just that.
Well,
you think it has something to do with taking down the AI threat? Sorta, kinda. But for the most part, it's just chip on her shoulder.
And that's not even necessarily a problem. Like, if you gave me a well-directed version of this, I could enjoy that simple classic sci-fi story of the bonding with the robot and getting over her thing. The problem is that between her performance and how the character's written, where, early on when she's been introduced to, like, oh, we've got these mech suits, that's what we're using, and we're all synced up to them. Like, she just has this constant, like, angry, what? You can't be serious? This is what we're doing? Like, that's her attitude the entire, like, first half of the movie, just over and over again, and there's just not a single lick of it which is remotely endearing or makes me empathetic towards the character, or it's such a
I feel like the biggest problem I have with it, and it's really hard to talk about like the sort of themes going in, because is a lot of overlap with Creator, but I don't want to say anything about Creator until that one comes out. But a big thing that I'm having a problem with here is the fact that the robots don't really stand for anything. They aren't really a metaphor or anything like that.
No.
It is all just a tool for the story of Atlas and what she goes through. Like, they don't stand for like an oppressed people. They don't stand for a loved one or like trying to open up or something like that. It is literally just an aspect of robots are just tools, and we use them as we would use a hammer.
Yeah, and I think the other problem is as well is that even like the AI in the mech suits just seems to already be pretty like alive. Like, there's no like build to like, oh, like these things are designed to be more just straight machines, so they're less like of a personality, and then it develops over the course of the movie or something. No. Like, it just straight up already kind of is what it is, barring a little bit of influence from how Atlas is, and it just kind of feels like again, why is the AI in these suits just completely freeform like this? It feels absurd given what happened with the other AI bot she already had. So, like, very strange. The action is not particularly interesting. This movie has serviceable visual effects to a point, but there's so much of it that is just so badly composited green screen. And that is the big thing that was really sticking out to me. Is there's so many moments in this where a character will just be standing against the sky, and the sky will be green screened. There's a shot towards the end where it's just her and there's just a sky behind her, and it just looks so bad. There's a shot early on when she's in like the docking bay where all the mech suits are on the ship, and like it's so badly composited that all I'm thinking about is how much none of this is really there. There's not even like part of the set that's real. It's just all fake behind her.
I mean, it gets maybe about half an hour into the movie before it introduces her to her mech suit, but it is, as soon as that happens, you then split the movie into two different shots. You get her in the mech suit, which just took like 5 days of filming, all just her sitting in a chair, a cockpit, and that's it. And then you have CGI shots of all the composite, her being like the mech suit moving around on this alien planet. Everything looks weird and different. There's nothing that's actually being filmed for any of the external shots.
Yeah, it's a much, not only is it not as technically like impressive as something like an Avatar, it's also much less artistically driven than Avatar. Because Avatar, for whatever you may want to say about that, James Cameron has a goddamn vision, and he cares about the design of that world and how everything looks, and it's all building what he thinks is the right visual style for the story he's trying to tell. Here, it's just kind of like it doesn't. This movie does not matter that it takes place in an alien planet. It could literally take place in like just another country in some secret, like maybe an island somewhere where he's hiding. It doesn't matter that we're in a different planet. If anything, it just kind of raises like, wait, traveling around in space is this easy now? I feel like you could probably say some more about this, or mention why do we have this space travel? Like, have we got colonies in like Mars and like maybe even other galaxies? Since we can literally just jump to another galaxy as easy as this, and they present it as the easiest thing in the world. Well, how spread out are we? Like, are we on different planets? And if we're on different planets, then why is the robot's only goal to like take over Earth? Like, surely there's other places they could go and like take over maybe as well. Like, does the movie even talk about any of this?
No,
I don't think it does.
The thing. The robot have a very, very anti-human slant. That is like their whole thing is they're like humanity is going to end up killing itself. But it doesn't explore it in the realm of like, oh, you know, your resource depletion, you're spreading yourselves across the galaxy and you're just taking over everything and using it for your own. None of that gets explored. None of that's a problem. It's all just because we're chimps with bombs. That's the whole reason that they're upset. They're like, well, AI is so much smarter and we see that you guys are savages, so we can't have you around anymore. Like, that's it. We don't explore anything. They set up these grand ideas of space travel and interstellar stuff, and then they just say, yeah, but like, we're apes with bombs. And we just never move past that.
Not to mention the fact that the villain is barely seen for the vast majority of the movie, and whenever he does show up, when we do get a scene with him, he just kind of chews the scenery. Like, I know Simu is, like, people really like his stuff from, like, Shang-Chi, and they liked him in Barbie. Here, he did nothing for me. And admittedly, Sterling K. Brown was also pretty poor in this. Mark Strong's like a general who sends everyone on the mission, like at the start of the movie. He's I mean, he's got nothing to work with. He's just doing generic military man who's you know, sending people on the mission.
And honestly, I think that's everybody. Nobody has anything to work with. There's no character here. You say the lines as best you can, but I mean, at the end of the day, if you're playing a paper bag, you're going to be playing a paper bag regardless.
I mean, even the tropes early on when, like, no one wants to work with Atlas, and Mark Strong's general is the one man who'll like, stand up for her and say, no, she's smart and she's driven and she knows about these guys, these robots, and she's the one we need because of that. Like, he stands and makes this, like, sort of speech arguing with Sterling K. Brown, and the entire time, Sterling K. Brown, I'm used to being so animated, he's usually quite emotive, and here he's, like, really subdued, and I don't know if that was just, like, either he doesn't give a shit and he's phoning it in, or maybe he's actually trying to do something different to give the character, like, something else, but honestly, it never amounted to anything. It never became a goddamn thing. I couldn't give a shit about a single character in this movie for a start. Like, that's you know, a problem. I don't think it looks good. I think the IDs are not explored. It feels like a hodgepodge of things that, like, an AI might put together. I don't actually think that's the case, but it feels like it might as well have been.
Yeah, no, it feels like the beats of the movie, each of the scenes follows a structure. It had an idea as to, like, the writers had an idea as to what they wanted to do. But when it came down to the nitty-gritty of actual character development, of, like, good line readings, of, like, whatever they wanted to do, they just fell back onto every single, like I said, MCU sort of thing. They lean back on, here's what worked previously, we're not going to mess with it at all. And they just copy and paste it over essentially everything that we've seen before.
Yeah, but it's even worse than that. And and this honestly leads to a greater problem with, like, Netflix and their original movies, and just how lacking they are. Like, it feels like a Netflix movie, and I feel like I'm going insane trying to define this every time it comes up, because it is hard to define. But there is a feeling of just absolute mundanity, and just, like, this idea that they're just churning out content and they don't even care if it's something people are paying attention to. All that matters is that there's something there that you can click on and it'll be on whilst you're doing something else. It feels like that. It feels like it's just a piece of content to add another thing to the list.
I mean, you told me we were doing this movie maybe like a few weeks ago. You added it onto the schedule and you were like, oh yeah, Netflix is coming out with this. And I'm like, I haven't heard a single thing about this movie. I have no idea what this movie is at all. And yet when I went onto Netflix last night to start playing it, it was there. It was the top thing. It said, hey, new movie. And so I clicked play. But I guarantee you, if I go in through like my girlfriend's account instead, if I click on that, 2 weeks from now, never going to see it again. It's never going to pop up. Because again, it's, hey, we did it. It's there. If anybody wants to check it out, cool. But like, moving on, get us the next piece of content.
Yeah, it makes for a flashy trailer, which is actually how I heard about it. I got the ad for it when I was at the movies, and I went, "Oh, geez." It wasn't in the trailer section though. It was in like the ad section, if that makes sense. It was in with the ads before the trailers, because Netflix don't have trailers that go before the movies.
Yeah, it's the stuffed in between the, at least in America, the insurance commercials and the car commercials before the movie starts.
Yeah, we don't really get insurance commercials here, but yeah, a lot of car ads. I feel like, actually, last time I was at the movies, which was recently because it was Furiosa, I got 3 different ads for banks. I feel like the bank ads have really went up, and they all had celebrities in them as well. One had Dominic West from The Wire in it. One had Ant and Dec, who you wouldn't know, but they're like 2 British TV presenters. And then the other one didn't have like a famous person in it, but it was like all about, it was just like a sort of heartwarming thing about, make sure your savings are safe and blah, 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 blah. Like, I was like, this is weird. I don't feel like I've ever got 3 of these in like almost back to back like this. But then other than that, apparently there'll be a Diet Coke ad or something.
Yeah. Apparently the audience of Furiosa, their analysts think that the audience is not good with their savings.
Oh, it's got nothing to do with the movie I was seeing. It's the same ads that play before every movie.
Fair enough. The people who are still shelling out for movie tickets when everything's on streaming, they're like, clearly you can't handle your money.
Yeah, the one that's, I mean, you say that, but the movies that are going to theaters are by and large better than the ones that are going to streaming services.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
Now, the ad that I'm sick of, though, I keep getting this ad for one of the networks, for, mobile networks, S3, and it's this ad of this like, older woman who's just like, the joke of the ad is that in every situation she's ignoring what's going on because she's like going, like a photo on social media, and it plays. I've seen it like the last 4 times I went to the movie, so I'm sick of it now.
I'll be honest, whenever I get to the theater before the trailers start, I just close my eyes for a while. I'm so tired of the ads.
I mean, I still listen to a podcast when the ads are playing, but like, I'll still see them. They're still there.
Yeah.
Anyway, what it says about this movie, that I'd rather talk about the ads that I've been seeing at the movies.
I was gonna say.
Than talk about any more of this. And like, let's be clear here. Like, as this was going, like, I was struggling to even pay attention because it is not engaging to such an extreme degree that, like, I had to force myself to keep looking back at it. And, well, I was always looking at the screen, don't get me wrong, but, like, to actually be taking the information in, I had to constantly hit myself in the leg and be like, no, pay attention, I have to talk about this.
I mean, I'm sure you've seen the stories. I think I've even heard you talk about it before, but the idea that Netflix and all these streaming services are bumping around of specifically second screen content.
Yes.
And this feels like that. This feels like the idea of like, okay, you need something on in the background. You just want to hear like some familiar calming voices or whatever. There you go. Second screen content. Because visually, there's nothing here. You don't need to look at this movie for any reasonable amount of time. The
truth is that the vast majority of their content, especially their movies, has felt that way for a long time. Like, there's the odd exception, like they had Roma, which was nominated for Oscars, and a couple others like that. But by and large, it's stuff like, what was that movie? Red Notice, I want to say? Maybe?
Sounds familiar?
There was like an Extraction. There was other ones with like actors in them that but the movies are completely forgettable with their titles. I never watched any of these, but like I vaguely remember like they go through these little advertising cycles of like, oh, here's the thing they've got that they'll talk about for a weekend maybe, if you're lucky.
Right.
This was a soulless movie. It's a soulless experience. I cannot recommend it in any way, shape, or form. And while it may not be as technically bad as some of the worst things we've seen or done, or the sort of stuff that we do in extra reels and Patreon, which is like some of the worst things ever made, in some ways I actually hated watching it more than those, because at least when I'm watching something that's a complete train wreck, if it was made by a person who just was inept, at least it's, oh well, one person cared about this. I don't believe for a second that anyone behind the process of making this movie cared about it. I don't think the director of this movie, Brad Peyton, who did like San Andreas and Rampage, he likes working with The Rock apparently. I don't believe for a second that this is a passion project or that he was trying to do the best he could with this. This is a job where he showed up to work, he got his shots in, he yelled, "That's it for the day," and came back the next day, and he did that until the thing was complete. I don't believe for a second that a single bit of passion was behind this project.
No, and I want to make clear, I don't have a problem with people just showing up and getting a paycheck. Like 100%, that's my job entirely. But when it comes to the finished product, you feel that. You feel when there isn't any sort of passion in it behind the camera.
That's because it's an artistic medium, right? Like it's okay. I have no problem with most people just showing up for a paycheck, because no one, like, I don't have to like watch someone's day of work at some other industry and be like, well, I'm not, like, the passion's not in here clearly.
Do you really care about flipping that burger? Do you though?
Yeah, that doesn't matter. Here though, when it comes to movies, it does matter. And absolutely, you can feel it when it's just a corporate product. Like, and there's varying degrees to it, but Netflix's original movie content is like, I threw this in knowing it was probably going to be bad. And like halfway through this movie, I'm like, oh, did I really need to add this to the schedule? Does anyone really care that this exists? And honestly, the test will be in the engagement. Like, if the YouTube numbers for this are low, then I promise you, like, I am going to start ignoring just about any Netflix sci-fi movie for this show. Like, maybe something high profile, if it's, like, clearly going to be more talked about, fine. But this could be the death nail for any, like, Netflix original sci-fi movies for Ace going forward.
Oh no.
Because the thought of sitting through something this bland and then not even having anyone care, and to be honest, I can't blame anyone if they don't care. Like, there was a period in time where Netflix was so ubiquitous with, like, it was the one streaming service that almost everyone had because there wasn't as many of them,
and it had everything on it.
Right. But people did pay attention to the original content coming out, and you typically got a large amount of interest in reviewing Netflix content. That has diminished over the last 5 years quite considerably. So, like, this is your chance, make or break. And not that I think Netflix really cares, but I'm just saying, if like anyone actually cares about Netflix original stuff being covered, like, this is the last chance. This is it.
I would love to just see, like, Netflix, like, analysts and stuff like that running a letter down the hall. Mild Fuzz isn't going to cover us anymore.
And then they have all their bots like jump in and get clicking for views, and they're going to use.
They're still going to do that exact same, like, stuff because that was the story that always came out about their first series, House of Cards. Was they just looked at what everybody was watching on Netflix and they're like, okay, Kevin Spacey, David Fincher, political thrillers. Let's just do that as a series. And they did it. I would love to see them looking at your analytics for what you watch on Netflix and other streaming stuff and just hand tailor a new movie that you theoretically would love, but then you go to watch it and it's just the same exact awful stuff.
Yeah, just the same. I mean, how many more words for bland can I think of to say in this review? Soulless, bland, beige, mundane, just heartless, empty, devoid of any emotion or caring. Like, they pretend there's emotions here. They pretend she has these dramatic moments and where she's caring about things, but I just could not give less of a shit. It's so trite. It's trite, I tell you.
It feels to me like it's again, there's a book, there is a algorithm of, if you want to cause feelings, then you just sprinkle these words in, you do this emotional reaction. It doesn't feel like it's coming out naturally from the characters. It feels like it's coming out from, oh, we're at 50 minutes in. Time to have this sequence now.
In a way, this is worse than Rebelman, because I hate and I despise Rebelman, but at least it's that idiot's vision. like no, I mean, there's a person behind it.
That's everyone's always said it's the horseshoe. Is you can go to any far end of the spectrum and you're going to get enjoyment out of it for one reason or another. But the minute you hit the middle, the minute you hit the most bland stuff there is, you get nothing. There is no way to enjoy this movie.
Spoilers, spoiler warning. I don't imagine it's going, like, I don't think it's going to take that long. I don't have a lot to say about much of this movie. We're going to get through it. There's the opening, like, blah blah blah, this is how all these things happened. Robot man villain, he left planet.
It's somewhere implied in there, just to give like the exact stuff, it's implied in there that it's not that he's convincing robots to rise up, it's that he's somehow altering all of the other AI's code so that they are able to rise up.
Yes.
So it's not like they were always capable of this. They had to have their code changed somehow to do it.
Yes, and Atlas's mother was the engineer who designed him, made him, but then he killed her and almost killed Atlas even. But so when it does this time jump though, it's 28 years later, and
I saw that pop up and I'm like, oh god, zombies. This is the 28 years later we've been waiting for.
Yeah, although I have to question the age of the character here a little bit, because Jennifer Lopez is like 50, right?
That sounds right. I don't want to specifically say 1969, so over 50.
Over 50, right? And she's like, what, 10? In this, like, because later on we actually get a flashback of this. What?
Yeah.
So this movie's telling us she's 38, give or take.
Good job, movie.
I mean,
yep.
I mean, whatever. If you want a 50-year-old as your lead character, fine. I don't care. But like, don't pretend.
That's just 38.
Yeah.
No, you're right. I mean, absolute oldest I would say the kid was in the flashbacks was 12. There's no way she's any older than that. So, yeah. But at most, you got 40.
Yeah. So, yeah. I just I don't know. There's a disconnect there. But anyway, we see her wake up. She's just kind of miserable. She wants her coffee. Oh my god. I get so sick of her asking for her coffee, like, throughout this movie. She's got a specific coffee she likes, and she keeps asking the robots to make it for her.
What are you talking about, Pete? That's a relatable character trait. Everyone has to have their coffee.
Yes. We see, like, a SWAT team going after a sleeper cell AI robot, right? And we see this guy's face a ton because there's like copies of him like on the planet. But we get like a kind of just awkward action scene where he comes out and he drops like a one-liner before he starts just like throwing all the SWAT team into walls and stuff.
Yeah, he does, like, I mean, the whole fight scene happens and then he dives off a balcony, does the superhero landing, cracks his knuckles and goes, all right, let's do this. And I'm like, I hate you so much. We're like 10 minutes in, not even, and I hate this so much.
And they set off like an ion grenade, which just, fries him. Like, it just sort of puts him out. And they bring in Jennifer Lopez to interrogate the head of the robot, because they can turn him back on and it's just his head. So that's what they're going to do. And this is where we get the whole thing where Stellan K. Brown's like, oh, not her. She's a loose cannon. We can't have her come in and do this. And then Mark Strong's like, no, like, she's driven, she's passionate, she knows a lot about these robots. This is how she'll pull this off. She'll be the one to do this. So we get a scene where she's interrogating the head. She basically tricks the head by saying she's found in his code where the bad guy's hiding, what planet he's on, and the robot like internally checks if that's true, but that shows her where the information is. So she's just tricked him into giving up the location. Wave your hand at the camera or something, David. Your focus has went
sorry,
wonky. So it's like, okay, we know what planet he's on. It's in the Andromeda galaxy. All right.
Yeah, like an entirely separate it's one thing if you want to say like, oh, he's on Jupiter or something like that. So be it. But no, he is in another, not just star system, galaxy. He is gone, and they just say, oh yeah, no, we can get there, no problem, no big deal.
And the immediate fallout to this is that they're going to go on a mission, and she's like, I need to go on there. I need to be sure that he gets killed. Although the mission is to bring him back alive for whatever reason. But
they want to study his code so that they can blah, blah, blah.
But she's like, no, I need to be there. Mark Strong doesn't want her to go. Stellan K. Brown shows her their big mech suit that they've got and like explains that they're linked with their mech suits and it's like a two-way link, yada yada. And he then says, you know what, maybe she's got a point. Maybe she is an expert on this bad guy and that would be an advantage to take her with us. And Mark Strong's like, oh, okay, I mean, if you want her to go, then I'll prove it. There you go. Go get him, Tiger.
I love how the one thing they keep bringing up, specifically her, that she keeps on saying over and over again is Harlan, the AI guy. He is like a master tactician. He plans for everything. He's always one step ahead. And at no point during any of this did she ever consider the fact that her showing up would be part of the plan.
I mean,
like, at no point is she just like, yeah, clearly Harlan would want me around.
Well, even not that, which is maybe really specific, right? Because I actually had a problem with that later on when he's like, oh yeah, I wanted you to come. I knew you couldn't resist coming, right? That's so specific. But even the fact that he wants the ship to come so he can steal the warheads from it is like, oh, well, you couldn't have seen that he wants these supplies? Because she even makes a point later when she sees his base on this planet. It's like, oh, you must have been pillaging all this tech and like stuff from God knows where. And I'm like, yeah, like the only way he could be like building stuff is if he's stealing various things from whatever. Maybe he's going to different bases that humans have got. Although, by the sounds of it, humans haven't even heard about where he is or heard a peep from him in like 28 years, which suggests that, you know, if one of their human bases on a moon somewhere got attacked and like, all their stuff was stolen, you'd think that would have traveled back down the line of, oh, someone at least did this, and they could maybe theorize, oh, maybe that was this Harlan character.
Pete, let's just pump the brakes here. You're applying some logic and like development here. He just has a base. Don't question how he has a base full of technology. He just has a base full of technology.
Oh, I just remembered at the start when they're doing the info dump, there's a clip of like an old scientist guy explaining the old rules of robotics, and I'm like, this is just by the number. This is just so by. And there's nothing wrong with bringing this stuff up. It's just, it's just like, okay, I've heard this in multiple movies at this point, so just like cutting to this guy explaining, oh yeah, the first rule should be the robots can't harm humans. That should be the first rule.
I love how it's phrased though, because the way that if you didn't know who Isaac Asimov is, the way that he phrases it, it makes it sound like Isaac Asimov is Einstein equivalent of like AI. That he's just some mythical character in this universe who's like, of course the first rule should be don't harm humans. But then for people who actually know who Isaac Asimov is, it's like, you mean the science fiction writer? We're just taking his rule? Okay, yeah. All right, continue, movie. Keep going.
I mean, there's a joke to be had here. I've seen this screenshot going around on Twitter, and it's been more about like some of the AI stuff that's happening in the real world. But the joke being that, oh, you know, point A in time, filmmakers like or writers like, oh, I finally finished my book about this fancy Triceleron operating device, and then you know, skip 20 years later, you know, tech bros in San Francisco, we finally made that Teclaron device that's in the book. Don't build the Teclaron device.
I mean, it's right. It absolutely is.
So, I mean, the idea that, oh, we were inspired to build dangerous AI robots because all science fiction has told us for the last 50 years is that it could end very, very poorly.
But what if it didn't? We could make some money.
It's that clip from Arrested Development. You know, couples therapy doesn't work for almost any of the couples that try it, but it may work for us.
Yeah, pretty much. Oh, God. I just... Also, one thing that comes up at the beginning of this movie, which pisses me off because they set something up and then never do anything with it, is she carries around this little chess piece with her. It's like, if you're watching Inception, it's her totem. It's just a thing she carries around for comfort. But it has a magnet in it. And during this interrogation where she is getting the information out, she uses the magnet in this chess piece to do like a little reset thing on the robot. And then towards the end of it, it says like, "Oh, I cannot be killed," and she's just like, "Want to bet?" And she jams the magnet in again, and it seemingly fries his system. Then we stop using magnets against robots. We only use bullets from this point forward because, sure, man, why not? You set up that magnets can fry these bots, but instead, now let's just shoot them a bunch instead of just firing off an EMP at the planet and calling it a day.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's the thing. She's arguing against them even going onto the ground. She's like, just nuke it from orbit. It's the only way to be sure. She doesn't say that line, obviously. I'm paraphrasing from a better movie. But
Yes.
they're like, no, we want to try and get him back so we can analyze his code, whatever, blah, blah. But anyway, so they go on this mission. The ship just takes off. It doesn't even like have to take off like a rocket, which is fine. It's the future. You've got a fancy ship that can just leave the atmosphere, fine. And then it's got an FTL drive or whatever it is, which will just take it to the other galaxy. Also fine.
They also have the only thing that they've set up in the 30 years since as a global defense system is they have a giant force field around Earth that has a bunch of gates, but you have to know the password. That's the only way in.
He literally says, I'm sending the 2F authorization now. I'm like, really? We're just calling it two-factor authorization?
I especially love because it's not two-factor. Two-factor implies two totally separate things. Meanwhile, it's just the one guy pressing two buttons.
Yeah, but there was two codes on the screen. So
okay.
Presumably the one code went somewhere and one code went somewhere else or something. I don't know. Anyway.
Whatever.
So they go, she gives them a briefing. I already kind of mentioned this scene. But she doesn't really give them a briefing other than just some broad ideas of like, oh, the planet's, going to be dangerous because it's hostile. The robots will survive better than we do. That's why he's picked it, blah, blah, blah.
We can't breathe on the planet, stuff like that.
She basically just goes off the handle after about 30 seconds and starts yelling about, oh, you've trusted these AIs in your mech suits, like you're dooming us all, you idiots. She basically just sounds like a preacher, like an angry preacher who starts raving about the apocalypse. It's something.
I would love to just replace this speech, but instead of AI and robots, just be like rock and roll and like, it's loud music, and it's just like, oh, you and you kids and you friggin' rock and roll, you're not following the way humanity's supposed to follow.
So, Stellan K. Brown talks to her a couple times, but ultimately, the movie doesn't really get started till they're on the planet. And the big inciting incident of that is that when the planet's in the orbit of when the ship's in the orbit of the planet, they're getting into their mech suits. She's obviously not going down because she's not a ranger, as they're called, these soldiers. However, they know they're here. The robots attack with some missiles, and like the ship starts falling apart. So the only way to save Atlas is Stellan K. Brown in his mech suit grabs her and puts her into a spare mech suit, and it's like, hey, you're going to have to strap in, and you're going to have to go down. You'll die if you stay up here. So we get a big over the top CG vomit sequence of like just like the mechs falling through the sky and spinning around and almost getting hit by bits of debris and like villain mechs or whatever
like
it is.
Drones and stuff coming up, yeah.
And that's all it is. And I'm like, this could be entertaining. There could be something here, but obviously this was the moment where it dawned on me that most of the rest of this movie, the main character was going to just be inside this mech suit. Like that is literally the majority of the rest of this film.
Yep. And it's one thing is as she's falling down, basically everybody's calling into her, even the mech suit's telling her like, hey, the only way to do this is to put in the Neuralink thing, like a little, looks like a hearing aid just over your ear. And that allows you to essentially soul bond with the mech and you become one entity and like, blah, 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 all that stuff. And she just refuses the whole way down to the point where she's just trying to do like vocal commands and stuff like that, which fits for her character. But you'd think in life or death scenario where she's literally going to die if she does not, she would have a little bit of self-preservation there of like, okay, fine, click.
I mean, the problem I have with this stuff is that I feel like some of the things later on that like, oh, we can't do this unless we complete the soul link kind of thing. It just feels all very arbitrary and like, wait, why? Why is that behind that quote unquote paywall of like having to link up? Like, because eventually when she chooses to link up, it's like only like, oh, we'll do a 40% link and just we'll keep it there, and she won't do the full 100%. And at a certain point, like when the mech gets damaged later, he's like, oh, I can only like operate again if we complete the soul link. And I'm like, wait, you can only turn back on again if you complete the soul. This feels like you're a manipulator, to be honest, if anything.
Oh yeah, my favorite one is we've reached 60% soul link. Now you can use weapons. And I'm like, this is just a little pop-up in the game. This is a little thing saying you've unlocked weapons.
Yeah, why would that be locked? I don't know. It just absolutely absurd. It's just an arbitrary rating device for marking each point of the next time she'll make a leap. None of it actually makes sense in the context of actually thinking of how this world works or how these things would actually function.
Right.
So, yeah, I mean, the whole mission when she lands is one to actually start like interacting with the mech, but their goal is to get to the rendezvous point where everyone's going to land. So she's like, hey, let's go. And the mech's immediately like, all right, getting the thrusters ready. We're going to start jumping. And she's like, no jumping. The drones will detect us if we're in the air. We have to just walk. And the mech's just like, no, my number one goal is to keep you alive, and we only have so much power left, so it'll be quicker to jump. Walking will take too long. And she's like, well, walk fast. So we just get the first bits of bickering between them, and that's...
By the way, the mech does give itself a name. It is Smith.
Yes.
And it has just a stereotypical like male voice. It's literally called the default voice.
Yes.
So, yeah. It's at this point, she's refusing to do the Neuralink. She's saying like, I'll just manually control it. You just like keep me updated on stuff like that. But the one thing that gets me is that as he's trying to convince her to go through with it, because obviously he wants to do it, like all of them think it's a cool thing to do, he specifically says, well, if we combine, we'll be more than just a human and an AI. Like together, with your analytical abilities and my like mech suit or whatever, we can do so much more. And all I could think in that moment is, this random human girl, yeah, she's smart, but she's smarter than an artificial intelligence robot. Like at one point we show the robot can scan through his entire code looking for errors in the quarter of a second. And it somehow needs her analytical mind to be better?
I got nothing for you.
Yeah.
What you want from me?
Like, I don't understand what the humans are adding to this scenario. You've made the robots too smart that I don't understand what the humans are giving in this 50-50 here.
Because the robots need to bond. Like they get lonely, so they need to bond with a human. It's companionship.
Bond with another robot. Get a dog. I don't care. Just why do we need this?
Ah, dear. So the big thing is though, is when they get to the rendezvous site, all the other rangers are dead. They've all been killed, and this was actually another little sort of plot hole, I guess we'll call it, for me. Is that later on in the movie, there's multiple times where there's like a line of robots firing their guns at her in the mech suit, and the mech suit just tanks it as if it's nothing. So all I could think was, well, what weapons did you use to kill all these rangers who were also in their mechs? Because you seem to make pretty good work of them, and they were like, there was like a dozen of them, and you killed them all. My
favorite bit to this scene that actually got a laugh out of me, wasn't intentional laugh on their side, but she's looking over and you see all of the clearly bullet holes in the front of these mechs and the people dead in the back. And as she looks over like 3 of them, she says, this isn't just damage from falling. Yeah, no shit. Good job. Freaking idiots.
Yeah, she collects the dog tags, and then the one robot guy is like snooping around, and we get well, the confrontation doesn't happen yet. She just sort of runs away here, I think.
No, I mean, they chase after. They see her there.
Oh, they do, okay. Yeah, it's all starting to blur together. This is when
she sets off the
ion bomb.
She keeps running, and then she sets off the ion bomb, yeah.
Yeah, which Smith, the robot, in the suit, so I'll just call him Smith now, just so we've got a name for him, but Smith inside the mech suit is like, no, don't do that. That's a bad idea for this reason. And she does it anyway, and it creates a giant sinkhole and like sort of sucks her into like underneath like all this rock and stuff. Which is where the robot starts cracking some jokes. The robot says, "Hey, we're between a rock and a hard place."
Yeah, and he's not allowed to Neuralink with her because obviously she hasn't put on the thing. But he has been trying to like analyze her personality and like adapt to her, because that's his core functional thing, is to adapt to the human. And he makes the point of saying like, yeah, well, you often hide behind jokes and sarcasm, so I'm trying to do that. Is that not, am I not doing a good job? And she's like, shut up. Just stop. And you'd think that would be the point, that the writers would realize like, oh yeah, two sarcastic characters playing off each other, that doesn't really work. But nope, they double down.
Yeah. Again, like conceptually, it's not a bad idea that the robot mirroring her personality makes her realize how she is, and maybe she learns from that and grows.
Mm-hmm.
But the execution is just so mind-numbingly simple that you can't really get into it at all. It's rough stuff. So they spend some time down here. Her legs hurt here as well, and the robot suit kind of like basically patches her up and gives like a metal plate that kind of like it welds onto her leg or something, and it's a whole little sequence. I think it's around here as well. You see Sterling K. Brown is alive, but he's been kidnapped by the villain, and he's got him on a table, and he's like jabbing some sort of thing in his eye, and I don't really have much to say other than Simu was chewing the scenery, and he's just a generic villain. Yeah. There's like no development to him whatsoever.
He has absolutely no nuance as a character. He is 100% just, I have completely given into the idea of killing all the humans, and nothing will convince me otherwise. And it's not like, it's not how like Avengers plays with Thanos, where it's like, does he have a point? Despite the fact he clearly doesn't. It's just like, no, he's just crazy. He's just this genocidal, and he wants to kill everybody. That's it. And
well, until later on, when we find out he doesn't want to kill everyone. He wants to kill the vast majority of people.
Right. Which is even dumber. But regardless, they very much at the end try to play off the idea of chimps with bombs, where they just say like, you're too irresponsible and you'll end up killing yourselves. So if I kill off most of you, then hopefully you'll learn. And it's like, that's not a plot. That's not a motivation. I don't know what you're trying to do here.
Yeah, I mean, I guess they're going for that. This is technically him still obeying the first rule, which is to like help humanity, and he thinks helping humanity is killing most of them off, so that the ones who are left can learn to work with the robots and build a better planet, kind of thing.
You know what my favorite thing about the Asimov rules are? Mm-hmm. Is I don't know if it was he himself or someone who came afterwards said it, but the fact is that in all the books where they play with the 3 rules of robotics, right, that the rules are in place when the bad things happen. So all these people who swear by the 3 laws of robotics and say we have to use those to keep people in check, it's like, no, the books show what happens when it's just those 3 rules. Bad stuff. A lot of bad stuff. Clearly the rules don't work. And this is just a prime example where you say, oh, humanity must not come to harm. Well, then I have to kill humanity so that they don't harm themselves. Clearly.
All right, so basically the goal here, it's kind of to get to the evac point. They've got like an evac place where they're going to try to go, but instead they want to go to where the base is. The idea is that they can at least tag it so that the people back home will know where the base is, and they can just nuke it from orbit, set off a big ion bomb kind of thing. So we get this sequence where they run to kind of like in the vicinity, they plant a tracker, it's whatever. But then,
by the way, when they were down in the hole, she put on the Neuralink, by the way.
Oh, is that when that happened? Okay. Yeah. He's basically, I can't dig her way out of here unless you put it on. But again, she only lets it go up to like 40%, and then later 60%. And it's not until the chips are really down later on where it's like, okay, I'll give you full access. It's time to fully come together.
Yeah. But it's not even like it's a personal thing that she's choosing. Like, she's not saying like only go to 40%. It goes as far as it can, and then it stops when it hits like a mental block where it's like, you're not opening up enough to me. Let me be your like couch therapist real quick. Tell me about your relationship with your mother. It genuinely has that. Well, like, he genuinely prides that.
To be fair, the first thing he does to try and calm her down is ask her if she likes pie or cake more.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then she's like, I've interrogated enough people. I know you're just trying to relate to me. And he's like, all right, I'll be more direct. Why do you hate AI so much? And they just give the backstory.
Yes. And well, we get some of it. We don't get the meat of it, where she feels guilty that she flipped a switch herself, which she blames herself for her mother's death. She blames herself for everything that the bad guy's done, all the millions of people that died in the terrorist attacks. She blames herself for all of that because she linked up with Harlan, and that's what freed him from his, like, not even prison, but just like from the what a limit of control there was over him at the time.
Yeah, it was the two-way Neuralink. It was only ever a one-way Neuralink where the humans could like get stuff from the robots, but the robots couldn't get anything from the humans. And then she pressed the button, because I guess it was just in development, and they turned it into a two-way link, which allowed him to control the motor functions of the mother character and then force her to kill herself, because reasons.
Yes. Yeah. Anyway, while still looking at the base, though, she's like, "Hey, they've got the other ship that has all the warheads on it, and they're reprogramming it to send it back to Earth. Oh no, we have to try and do something about that." But then all the robots realize she's there, and she gets chased. It gets hit. The mech suit gets hit, and she goes into the dirt. And when she wakes up, she's now captured. The robot's sitting over, all turned off. Stellan K. Brown's lying there. And we get the villain making these big monologues about what he's going to do to Earth and humanity and all the rest of it. And that he wanted her to come back because...
There is no reason. It's just he wanted her to come back. That's it. That's all it was.
Yeah.
I think they say something along the lines of like, it's because I knew you and I knew that you'd have the other authentication code, so I'd be able to get it out of you.
That was it.
But he gets it from Sterling K. Brown, so like, what would it matter if it was just two officers that were actually like normal the whole time?
Yeah, I mean, I think after she destroys the ship with all the weapons on it, he's like, "Hey, you're going to call in a different ship so that I have another ship with weapons." And obviously that never really goes anywhere, because by that point we're just in the big third act kind of like,
right,
fight stuff. But ultimately it's just kind of like the mech suit is like, "Hey, I want to help. Like, if you let me Neuralink, I can get back up and running, and we can go and save the day." They took all the mech suit's weapons away, but there's like random big like swords and stuff lying around, and like extra arms from other parts. So the mech suit basically gives itself 2 extra arms, holds a big machete looking thing, and a couple other stuff, which isn't even something that gets used that much, because as soon as she jumps in and kills the first sort of wave of like robots that are trying to shoot her, the robot just picks up 4 of their guns and starts shooting those.
Yeah, he does one spin attack, throws away the swords, and picks up the guns. And it's like, well, that was a cool action figure, I guess. Moving on.
Yep, we're just brushing right past it. It's not that important. Nope. And then the big thing though is ultimately is that this ship with the weapons is leaving to go back to Earth to like kill most of the planet. And
yeah, they've got the codes, it's got the gun or bombs, and it's going to set fire to the atmosphere.
Yeah. Well, no, that's what's going to happen if they destroy the ship here.
No, it's also there. I think that's what the carbon bombs do, is set fire to, because they show the Earth burning. Like,
oh, just in general, that's what they do. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, because she says, "Oh, I'm going to shoot it down," and the AI, the suit's like, no, like that'll set fire to the atmosphere and kill us. And it's like, she's like, "Oh, hack in it and disable the warheads, and that'll stop that from happening." And he's like, "I don't have enough time. I don't think we'll be able to do it." And she basically just takes the shot anyway, and it turns out the mech suit was able to do it just in time. And the mech suit's like, "How did you know I would disable them in time?" And she's like, "I trusted you." And this is meant to be your big moment. She's trusting the AI. She's made a friend. Which is why we're all meant to be crying our eyes out when the bad guy destroys this mech suit in the next big fight scene.
Yeah. Well, he starts attacking her. After a big hit, her heart stops, and the mech suit starts freaking out.
Hold on. Let's just see how he's fighting, first of all, because he has like a laser sword. Right?
Yeah.
Right?
It comes out like in between his fingers.
That's right. It comes out like a really crappy Wolverine style thing.
Yeah.
Right? But it's like a laser sword. And then he gets like a chain and sort of like lasers that. So it's a big laser chain now. And he starts whipping that around. And then, eventually like hits in a way where she And she was like using like chess strategy to try and predict his moves or something. She's like, show me his like layouts or his like movement patterns, and I'll try and make a chess move to.
Right. Once they're 100% mapped into each other, the computer is able to analyze like the physicality of his movements and then predict how the next strike is going to come. So it's like in comics, that's like flash vision speed, where he's able to like super think at super speeds and be able to like plan out all the moves in advance. Which doubles down now on my idea of what in the hell are the humans doing here? If the robot is able to predict movement before it happens and react to it fast enough, why in the hell is this necessary?
Well, I mean, to be fair, these mechs are like 28 years newer than whatever Harlan's tech is, so he probably doesn't have that ability.
Okay.
That's my guess.
That doesn't answer my question as to why the mechs need the humans in them. Like, I know you say bonding, I get that, but like, if they're able to, without the human doing anything, predict the movement of their opponents, they should have been the ones sent in on this mission without any sort of anything.
Because humans don't want the robots to operate independently. They want the human oversight.
There is also one other thing that happened just before this that I'm curious if you have an answer for, because maybe I just missed it. The thing that happened that allowed them to get chased and actually caught is that all of a sudden Smith's like entire system freezes up and it appears that he's being hacked, even though they said that's physically impossible and shouldn't be able to happen, and then they just never mention it again.
I don't know how much attention I was paying at this point to catch what the reason for that was.
I don't mind.
I don't know. I genuinely don't know. But like you said, she eventually gets hit and her heart stops. So we get this scene, which is obviously meant to be this emotional scene, where Smith, the mech suit, is trying to save her by like defibrillating her, and like even takes her out of the seat and is like hold her in his hand as he tries and jolts her. But of course, Harlan, the villain, is like sneaking up behind him and like stabbing him more with a sword and cutting off key parts of him, and then eventually stabs him in like his fuel cell or whatever. And that kind of so she's pissed that her new robot friend is gone when she wakes up. But she basically does like a bit of a Batmaning thing where the villain turns around, she's not lying there anymore, and she stabs him through the back, and then opens up his head and like takes out whatever key components that make him run his.
Yeah, it's literally the thing of like, they said you had to bring me in alive, and it's like, they just want your code. And so she reaches in and pulls out like his brain processing unit. And
yes.
That's all they needed.
And that's pretty much it. We get a really cheesy moment where like new mechs are coming down because a ship's arrived, and we get
we get the big goodbye moment as well, where he's like, look, I'm not going to be able to make it. I'm redirecting my power source so you have enough oxygen to survive until the crew shows up. And she's like, no, I loved you. You're my friend now. And then he dies.
Yeah. And we actually get a scene back in Earth. Like, so we're just back on Earth after all this has happened. And Mark Strong comes to visit her, and she's basically all pro AI now. She's now a ranger. She has a new mech suit that she's given at the end of the movie, and she selects the default voice, and it sounds just like Smith, and seems to even know her a little bit already, but maybe that's just because she's linked with it. And she's like, aren't you going to ask me if I like pie or cake? And the robot's like, I already know you like coffee the best. And that's
yeah, and she's like, what's your name? And he's like, take a guess. And it's implied that somehow Smith has survived.
I guess the implication is because they were linked, some part of Smith was still in her.
Some part of Smith imprinted onto her and then carried over the... And you're right, that's what I thought too, but like I hate it.
Yeah. Also, there was a whole thing where halfway through the movie, she like found this fancy like alien plant, and she got to name it because she's the first human to find it, so she calls it Planty. That comes up at the end as well. Otherwise, we didn't even talk about how at one point they do kill the one AI guy that's following them on the planet before they go to the base, and she like crushes his head and stuff with her robot hand.
I mean, yes, she does, but then there's just more copies, like over and over.
Yeah, there's more copies.
Just duplicated him like 7 times.
But they've got yellow blood, which is just, hey, the androids and alien had white blood, so we'll give them yellow. That'll feel different.
Why can't it just be oil? Why can't it just be black? Like, that feels so much more natural to me than like whatever it is this stuff is.
I know. I think one of the things I really want to emphasize here is that all the action sequences that we've kind of mostly just quickly got through as much as we could without dwelling on them, because there's nothing interesting to say about them, is that they really are just a bunch of CG noise. It's just a bunch of CG things happening quickly on the screen with little feeling, little emotion. And having just watched Furiosa directed by George Miller and then going into this, the action in this is just painfully bad and painfully just crying out for some direction of some kind. And it's this movie is the definition of a bunch of shit just thrown together, and like, this is it, this is your product, no one cares, no one will remember it in a few months' time.
Yep. I mean, I will give it the smallest little credit here, is that there wasn't ever a point with specifically the fight scenes that I felt like there was just an ass pull, where it was just like, and now they have this ability. Like, every time that they did something, it was set up in advance, and they explained, like, my one example is the chest cannon at the end. They specifically said that all of his weapons were taken away except for one chest thing because it wasn't on the documentation. And that's what he uses to get some distance between him and Harlan when he's trying to revive Atlas. So they do at least set up that stuff, and it's never just a thing of like, oh yeah, by the way, the mech suit has an EMP that we never mentioned before, and then it just goes off right then. But that is the only thing I can give the action scenes, because you're right, the rest of it's just CGI trash just thrown together. And
while that may be true of the mech suit, I mean, all the stuff that Harlan whips out, like with his laser sword and laser chains and stuff. I mean, I get that he's been on his own for 20 years and has probably just added this stuff himself as upgrades, but yeah, there's not. Well, that's the thing though. There's so little of him in the middle of the movie that by the time we actually get to him being the villain we're here to fight, he's been less of a character and more of just a MacGuffin, in the sense that, like, we keep talking about him, but there's very little actually building up of, like, giving him presence or just making us care about him being the villain, you know?
Right. No, yeah, because the entire thing about this movie is not about villain and whatnot. The theme that they're going for is that this character doesn't trust anybody because she has pulled herself out of the world, out of guilt. She feels like she's responsible for all this bad stuff going on. And so when finally somebody makes the earnest choice to, like, try to get to know them, she's very distrusting of that, and she has to slowly open up. I get what they're going for. It's just that none of the characters have any sort of depth to them that you can make this analyzation that they're trying to make. It just feels so shallow the whole way through.
Yep. That's yeah, I got nothing else. Let's rate the goddamn thing. It's all right. It's an empty film devoid of soul, heart, nuance. Like, it's just devoid of everything. Like, there's nothing in this that I liked. Nothing. There's nothing I can be positive about. Like, there was sound mixing.
You did it. Good job.
There was a level of technical quality that doesn't amount to much in the grand scheme of things, but hey,
you know what's slightly, it's not the same story, but it's close, that we did on this channel already. Upgrade.
Okay.
Like, it's you've got a lot of similar things there, but it delves in just a lot deeper into the thing, and it felt, more importantly, that it had an actual vision to it. It felt like it actually was trying to do something and develop something out of it.
And that still fell short of being great. There were still problems with that story, but I mean, night and day, it's better than this. Like, there's no doubt about that. Anyway, what are you rating Atlas?
Looking at other things and using that as a jumping off point, because this is just so bland, it's hard to put it into words as to where it falls. I think I'm going to end on a 3.5. I'm just looking at other things I gave 4s to, and honestly, this feels worse than that, but it's not quite on the same level as, like, some of the worst stuff I've ever seen. So 3.5 sounds fair to me.
Oh god, it's been a while since we've had something. Well, no, not really, because Rebel Moon and Phantom Menace existed, but there was a reasonable amount of Oh yeah, if I'm compared to some stuff we've done recently, right? Yeah, it's worse than Prometheus. Like, I actually genuinely believe that. And I said that arguably it could be classed as worse than Rebel Moon. I mean, I don't know. I don't know if I'm willing to go into like, the 2 range. I think 3 out of 10 sounding right for me.
Okay, all right.
3 out of 10 is what I'm going with.
That's fine.
So there you go. That's what it is. David's got his homework movie to talk about in a second, but
yes.
I'll just quickly jump in here and say that if you enjoyed the show and you want to support the content and help keep it coming, I wouldn't be able to keep doing this if it wasn't for support on something like Patreon. Over on patreon.com/MailFuzzTV, you can get access to some bonus monthly shows that me and David do, like the Criterion Cut, where we review movies from the Criterion Collection, and extra reels where we review some of the worst movies ever made. Plus, there's bonuses for other movie shows. We do like the Screams After Midnight that I do with Tim, and of course, me and David also do a Collector's Cut if you haven't checked out that, where we do some non-sci-fi movies on a regular basis. So, yeah, go check out all that stuff. Like, subscribe, all those things to help out a bunch. And also, just before David does his homework movie, I'll say next time on the show, we are looking at a classic. We're going back to the 50s and we're reviewing It Came From Outer Space, which was a Patreon vote winner. So, something a little bit different. We've had a bunch of sort of new and recent movies over the last month. It's time to go and do something completely on the opposite end of the spectrum. So,
get back to our roots.
We'll see you for some pulpy sci-fi next week. So, David, yes. I have to imagine that unless you picked very poorly, your homework movie had to have been better than Atlas.
I think so. I think you'd agree as well. So, because these Netflix ones, like you said, you only added this to the schedule a couple weeks ago, I already mapped out all the homework I'm going to do pretty much until the end of the year. So, I got to pick whatever I wanted for this one. And I decided I wanted to go back to one that I enjoyed a lot. Doesn't have anything to do with this movie, and that is Cloverfield, the original one. I had not seen the original Cloverfield, and I think I rewatched it when Paradox came out, just to like get the full experience there, and I don't think I've watched it since. I remember when I went to go see the original Transformers in theaters, this was a trailer that played in front of that. And it was back when it didn't even have the name Cloverfield. They just showed the teaser trailer and then gave a date. And yes. I was so in. I was so 100% interested in whatever that was. J.J. Abrams' mystery box just sucked me right in. Having seen the movie the first time, I remember very much enjoying it. But then over the years, I remember it just kind of like fell off a little bit for me. It was something where found footage was a neat gimmick, but it definitely wasn't something that lent itself to multiple rewatches like that. By the time I got to it this time around, I do still think it is a interesting concept. My bad. Thought I silenced my phone. I do still think it was an interesting concept, but it wasn't... It's not like a timeless film by any means. I think that it is very much gimmicky and like of the time. And I think gimmicky is the right word there, where if you were to structure this as like a normal movie, I don't think it would have the same pull as it did. I do still like Clover as a concept, like the monster and like all the attacks and stuff like that. I think it's very interesting background stuff, but there is a part of me that kind of wishes that the Cloverfield universe didn't just immediately pivot out into something else of like an anthology sort of thing, and they instead kind of just develop this from different angles. That being said, 10 Cloverfield Lane is fantastic whenever I do get around to that.
I mean, yeah, that's the best one, so I'm actually glad they went that direction, to be honest.
I'm glad they went that direction, but I kind of wish it would have been its own separate thing rather than taking the Cloverfield name. But no, overall, I do still have some fun with it. I don't think that it's a bad movie by any means, but I do see the flaws in it a lot more than I did. How long would that have been? 15 years ago?
16 years now.
Longer than that, yeah. So I will go ahead and give this one a 6.5. But it's still got a little nice warm place in my heart for it.
Okay. Yeah, I remember when we did it for the show, and I hadn't seen it in a long time. Being forced through so many found footage horror movies, like it was kind of, it was like, oh shit, this is actually just a lot of the same tropes. But now I'm a lot more sick of all of these things, so it didn't hold up for me.
That's
from the experience that first time seeing it. Its tricks have all gotten old, sadly.
I mean, I definitely do not have as much horror as you do, so I haven't gone through that found footage stuff, but there were right after this happened, a few other like sci-fi movies and stuff that tried doing at least parts of it being found footage, and I just, yeah, it got old real quick. It was definitely a gimmick for like 2 summers and then just disappeared.
Yeah. Yeah, it's what it is. Yeah, bizarre pick, but sure.
Yeah. It was one that I've been meaning to go check back out again because I had it on my list as a thing that I wanted to rewatch eventually. So I figured, you know what? I don't have anything else going on. Let's go ahead and do this.
Sure. All right, well, that'll wrap up the show then. This has been the Atomic Cinema Experiment. It's a full hour and 10 minutes shorter than last week's episode. So...
Yep.
Which we were due a short one. We've had a lot of long episodes recently. So yes, we'll see you next week for It Came From Outer Space. Thank you very much for joining us. Let us know what you think of the movie in the comments, or wherever you would like to join the Discord, for example. But that is us. So thank you once again for watching or listening. We always appreciate it. Keep watching science fiction and computer ad salsa.